Ever feel like you've seen it all? Think again, Cine Seekers, because the next 40 minutes are about to flip your cinema world upside down. We're tunneling into the shadowy corridors of mid-century movie-making to unearth 15 razor-sharp psychological thrillers from the 1960s. Movies that made first-run audiences squirm and still tingle spines today. Dim the lights, hit that like button, and let's dive deep into the celluloid subconscious. Peeping Tom, 1960. Before the slasher craze, before found footage, there was Michael Powell's Peeping Tom, the Technicolor dagger that sliced the polite facade of British cinema in two. Mark Lewis, a painfully shy camera assistant by day, moonlights as a soft-core photographer. But his clandestine magnum opus is terror itself. He records the last terrified heartbeat of every woman he murders, forever chasing the perfect reaction shot. Powell straps us behind Mark's 16mm lens so that every scream lands like a mirror, making us complicit voyeurs. Cinematographer Otto Heller drenches Soho alleys in lurid reds and cold aquamarines, staging murders as poisonous fashion spreads. The entire shoot cost a modest £135,000, yet the outrage it sparked was priceless. British critics called the film evil, theaters pulled bookings, and Powell's career imploded overnight. But time sharpens dangerous art. By the mid-1970s, Cahiers du Cinéma hailed it as a meta-masterpiece, and today Quentin Tarantino screens it for incoming protégés. Trivia you can't unsee: the killer's weaponized tripod features a spring-loaded spike, so victims watch themselves die, a design Powell sketched after visiting Scotland Yard's Black Museum. Karl-Heinz Boom reportedly stayed in character off-set, creeping behind crew members and rehearsing Mark's nasal breathing until one focus puller quit. Film students study the final shot, Mark's camera tilted toward his own impalement, as cinema's most literal self-critique. Even the opening sequence, 2 silent minutes of stalking viewed through Mark's crosshair viewfinder, feels like an indictment. You paid for this, so watch. The Innocents, 1961. Few ghost stories whisper as icily as Jack Clayton's The Innocents, a velvet black riff on Henry James's Turn of the Screw. Deborah Kerr's fragile governess, Miss Giddens, arrives at Bly Estate, vowing to protect 2 angelic wards, only to suspect that previous servants, now dead, have wormed inside the children's smiles. Determined to pinch the viewer between seeing and doubting, Clayton shot in CinemaScope using experimental infrared filters. Shadows bloom like ink dropped in milk, and faces float free of background as if spirits already detached the flesh. Listen for composer George Aurich's lullaby, performed by a solo child then reversed on tape, so a sweet melody crawls back into itself. Production designer Wilfred Shingleton built sets with false ceilings and narrowing corridors, forcing Kerr to appear cornered even in open spaces. Budgeted at roughly $1.1 million, the film barely scraped by in America, where reviewers argued whether the ghosts were real or projected repression. Yet critics abroad called the ambiguity its genius. Martin Scorsese lists it among his scariest films. Guillermo del Toro screened it for the Crimson Peak crew as mandatory homework. Restoration houses now parade its silver nitrate shimmer at genre festivals, where fresh audiences gasp when a phantom face materializes against a moon-bright window. On set, Kerr insisted the child actors play hide-and-seek amid tombstones to absorb graveyard energy. Crew members swore they heard giggles when no one was in frame. Cape Fear, 1962. Sun-bleached streets hide lethal intent in J. Lee Thompson's Cape Fear. Freshly paroled rapist Max Cady, Robert Mitchum's embodiment of slow-moving doom, haunts attorney Sam Bowden's family, wielding legal loopholes like surgical scalpels. Each fake smile, each match struck on his thumbnail, promises violence deferred, never denied. Gregory Peck plays Bowden as a rock-eroding grain by grain, tempted to drop his briefcase and pick up a blackjack. Thompson and cinematographer Sam Levitt drown the Deep South in sweaty chiaroscuro. Daylight scenes shimmer, then sink into expressionist inkblots. Bernard Herrmann's score, blaring brass and timpani, was mixed louder than dialogue at previews, forcing terror to drown speech. United Artists bankrolled $2.5 million and doubled it worldwide, but censors carved away a dissolved rape flashback once deemed unfilmable. Mitchum fueled on-set dread. He loomed outside actress Laurie Martin's trailer, whistling Katie's ominous tune until she cried. Peck, producer as well as star, hired off-duty deputies for night shoots, mirroring Bowden's desperate protection. Critics of 1962 labeled it nasty, yet midnight revivals, and Martin Scorsese's 1991 remake catapulted the original to cult scripture, teaching filmmakers that dread stretched slowly is dread amplified. Knife in the Water, 1962. Roman Polanski's debut proves you can trap an audience on a sailboat and still leave them gasping for air. Andre, an affluent sports writer, and his icily glamorous wife Christina pick up a lanky hitchhiker and invite him aboard their weekend yacht. The Baltic Sun seems benign, but tension ripples each time the boy flicks open his switchblade, a tiny metronome for wounded egos. Polanski crammed a skeleton crew onto a 30-foot vessel, shooting 70% on open water over 4 wind-whipped weeks. With no room for dollies, cameraman Jerzy Lipman bolted a modified Aeroflex to the mast, inventing swooping boom shots that anticipate drone glides. The budget? A threadbare $25,000, partly borrowed from Polanski's acting gigs. The director forbade lead actors Leon Niemczyk and Jolanta Umeka from speaking to newcomer Zygmunt Milanowicz off-camera, letting curiosity curdle into the boy's silent resentment. Domestic censors fretted over its portrait of Poland's pampered elite, yet festival buzz roared. The film became Poland's first Oscar nominee, losing to Fellini by a whisker. Pauline Kael hailed its uncivilized intimacy, and Steven Spielberg cites it as a blueprint for contained suspense. To intensify realism, Polanski demanded real storms. During one gale, the boom operator lashed himself to the mast, capturing dialogue over shrieking wind. Shock Corridor, 1963. When maverick Samuel Fuller barged his crew into a real Los Angeles asylum, audiences didn't just watch Shock Corridor. They hallucinated it. Reporter Johnny Barrett schemes to win a Pulitzer by feigning madness, hoping to solve an inmate's murder. Instead, the corridors echo back America's own neuroses. A black civil rights student now spouts Ku Klux Klan rhetoric. A nuclear physicist regresses to childhood. A war vet imagines he's Stonewall Jackson brandishing a Confederate flag. Made for roughly $300,000, half refinanced on Fuller's house, the shoot reused hospital hallways with colored gels to stretch space on a dime. Fuller spliced in 4 lurid color dream sequences shot years earlier on leftover stock. Rainforest greens and atomic reds jolt the monochrome like fever spikes. Cinematographer Stanley Cortez dangled his camera from ceiling tracks so it glided above inmates like a clinical eye. Actors received one direction: play your truth louder than the walls. Initial reviews labeled it exploitation, yet French critics exalted its rawness. By the 70s, midnight crowds chanted lines back at the screen. Martin Scorsese screened it for Taxi Driver apprentices, and Guillermo Arriaga calls it Pressure Cooker Storytelling 101. The Servant, 1963. Swinging London's glossy exterior concealed stale drawing rooms, and Joseph Losey's The Servant peels back brocade to expose festering class rot. Idle aristocrat Tony hires Hugo Barrett as live-in manservant in a narrow Chelsea townhouse. Barrett's deferential "yes, sir" masks a puppeteer's grin. He rearranges furniture, resets clocks, introduces his sister Vera, really his lover, and lures Tony into drunken dependence. Harold Pinter's script weaponizes pauses. Every silence feels like a noose tightening. Budgeted at £250,000, the production borrowed Georgian interiors whose bulging panels resemble trapped breaths. Lucy and cinematographer Douglas Slocum filled rooms with mirrors so characters face each other yet watch reflections, literalizing swallowed resentment. John Dankworth's score layers ticking beneath dinner scenes. By the climax, viewers swear the house itself inhales. Critics recognized a British Les Liaisons Dangereuses, Bogart won a BAFTA, and Pinter's venomous dialogue infiltrated academia. The film's erotic power games seeded everything from Park Chan-wook's The Handmaiden to Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. Lucy shot chronologically, encouraging Bogart's performance to curdle. By week 4, he served crew tea in whispered mockery. Sarah Miles recalled waking to find Bogart polishing her shoes at 3 a.m., murmuring lines. Even David Bowie cited Barrett when crafting the thin white Duke persona. The Haunting, 1963. Some houses are born bad, warns the prologue, and Robert Wise's The Haunting convinces you wallpaper can plot murder. Dr. Markway invites timid Eleanor and sardonic psychic Theo to spend nights in labyrinthine Hill House, but the mansion prefers victims to visitors. Doors inhale, woodwork signs, and invisible knuckles pound like a cardiac echo through floorboards. Wise framed tight Panavision so corners curve like fisheye, trapping characters inside a photographic bell jar. The famous breath door effect happened off camera. Stagehands pressed against plywood while the frame was overcranked, giving timber a living heartbeat. Sound designer Murray Spivak rolled bowling balls overhead, slowing the tape to rumbling footsteps. Budgeted at $1.05 million, box office was modest. Variety dismissed its invisible ghosts. Time crowned without the greatest special effect. Stephen King calls it the scariest haunted house film ever. Julie Harris isolated herself from cast dinners to feed Eleanor's loneliness. Crew saw her whisper to walls between takes. Wise banned the word ghost, insisting terror lay in Eleanor's craving for belonging. Modern audiences rediscover it via Mike Flanagan's Netflix remix, sending new fans to seek original 35mm prints. Lady in a Cage, 1964. Before home invasion stories dominated headlines, Walter Grauman's Lady in a Cage turned a sunlit townhouse into a glass coffin. Privileged widow Mrs. Hilliard installs a private elevator after hip surgery. During a July blackout, it stalls 10 feet above the foyer. Rescue never comes. Petty thieves slither in, followed by a sociopathic greaser gang led by baby-faced James Caan, whose grin slices deeper than any switchblade. Shot in 18 days for $750,000, designer Hal Pereira built a split-level set on Paramount Stage 5, allowing cameras to prowl 360 degrees around the cage. Cinematographer Lee Garmis sprinkled mirror shards near lights, so reflections pulse like heat waves. To subliminally needle audiences, sound mixers layered mosquito buzz beneath Caan's laughter. Paramount's marketing went lurid. Theaters distributed barf bags and urged viewers to eat before seeing. Critics recoiled. The New York Times brandished unrelievedly sordid, yet drive-in crowds doubled the budget, and cultists later applauded its savage class critique. De Havilland called it her most exhausting shoot, trapped in 110-degree conditions that blistered fake pearls. Caan kept the switchblade prop for years, flipping it during auditions to telegraph menace. Film scholars pair it with funny games as proto-siege cinema, noting how Hilliard's wealth turns from shield to siren. Repulsion, 1965. London may shimmer in 1965, but within Carol Ledoux's mind every crack widens. Roman Polanski's Repulsion locks Catherine Deneuve inside a Kensington flat after her sister's seaside holiday leaves her alone with echoing catcalls. Time rots, rabbit carcasses decay on plates, phone bells morph into screams, and corridors pulse like arterial tissue. Shot for £65,000, the crew borrowed equipment after hours from Dr. Zhivago and lit with household bulbs for clammy realism. To craft the stretching hallway, carpenters built rubber walls that camera dolly tracks squeezed while cameraman Gilbert Taylor racked focus, so clawing hands shift from dreamlike blur to razor tactile. Sound designer Terry Rawlings buried dental drill whines beneath traffic, tightening viewers' jaws unconsciously. Deneuve isolated herself off-set, refusing English conversation to sustain Carol's detachment. British censors balked at hints at childhood abuse, yet international grosses reached several million, crowning Polanski king of subjective dread. Feminist critics read it as patriarchy's rape culture indictment. David Lynch credits its spatial paranoia for Eraserhead. During BFI's 4K premiere, new viewers sprinted from late screenings as the hallway slammed like a jaw. Bunny Lake is missing, 1965. Can you misplace a child who might never have existed? Otto Preminger's Bunny Lake is missing spirals through foggy London when American expat Ann Lake reports her 4-year-old daughter gone from school. Staff swear no child enrolled. Bunny's cubby remains empty. Inspector Newhouse investigates while even Ann's protective brother Stephen doubts her sanity. Preminger, maestro of the long take, choreographed 10-minute tracking shots through real precincts, letting Ann ricochet between clerks and cold records. Cinematographer Dennis Koop drenches widescreen frames in Venetian blind shadows, so Ann appears striped like a prisoner in her own narrative. Budgeted at £650,000, the production slated rock band The Zombies to play Diegetic Pub TV, one of cinema's earliest pop soundtracks. Dismissed in 1965 as tricksy, it found later allies. Hitchcock praised its paranoia. Modern critics hail it proto-giallo. A 2018 restoration uncovered subliminal jump cuts, baby rattles, caged dolls, Preminger spliced to unseat the subconscious. Trivia. Laurie Johnson's score uses a nursery rhyme sung backwards at half speed, replayed normal ghosting vocals. The Collector, 1965. First editions pinned to velvet, an art student pinned to a basement. William Wyler's The Collector distills John Fowles's novel into a claustrophobic duet. Bank clerk Frederick Clegg wins a football pool, buys a secluded Surrey cottage, and converts its cellar into a plush cell. His specimen, Miranda Gray, chloroformed on a London street and imprisoned until affection blooms, or withers. Wyler shot chronologically on twin sets, the clean cellar and a duplicate incrementally dirtied, to chart time's decay without calendars. Cinematographer Robert Surtees hid compact lamps in floorboards, raising humidity so sweat blossomed naturally. Stamp refused casual chat with Egger. She retaliated by missing marks, feeding real frustration. Their tension erupts in the dinner scene where Miranda smashes a plate, an accident Wyler kept. Budgeted at $1.3 million, the film quadrupled earnings, yet some critics recoiled at its perverse empathy. Oscar nominations landed for both leads, but its cult solidified when Stephen King lauded it as the darkest romance ever filmed. Trivia. The Butterfly collection on set, insured for more than Stamp's salary, was loaned from the British Museum. One escapee delayed filming an hour, mirroring Miranda's futile dashes. Ready to barter freedom for fascination? Hit like, drop your moral verdict, and stay tuned. The next feature sells midlife crises by offering you a brand new face. Because sometimes the prettiest glass case is just another view of oblivion. Upended. Seconds, 1966. Ever dreamt of swapping bodies like cars? John Frankenheimer's Seconds shows the warranty voids. Gray flannel banker Arthur Hamilton fakes death, undergoes radical surgery, and emerges as Malibu artist Tony Wilson, played by Rock Hudson in haunting vulnerability. Yet Utopia curdles. The shadowy company stages friendships, monitors canvases, and offers corrective surgery if identity fails. Correction meaning burial. Frankenheimer unleashed James Wong Howe with 9.5mm fisheye lenses, warping affluent brunches into dally nightmares. Saul Bass's opening credits smear faces like molten clocks. Shot for $2.2 million in a derelict Palisades mansion, sets dressed with surplus stretchers and actual surgical teams. Howe lit scenes with handheld pen lights strapped to cameras, creating iris-like glows around Hudson's uneasy eyes. Paramount released during Summer of Love. Audiences balked, grossing $1.5 million. Critics murmured cold plastic, yet underground cine clubs exalted its body horror prophecy. By the 80s, it influenced Cronenberg's The Brood and Jordan Peele's Get Out. Hudson later admitted the role mirrored his fear of living two lives. Fun fact, NFL Films legend John Facenda's baritone appears as a company recruiter, selling new identities like Sunday highlights. Consider this your warning. Fantasies come with fine print. Blow Up, 1966. Michelangelo Antonioni painted swinging London's neon with existential gray. Fashion photographer Thomas shoots lovers in a lush park, then discovers amid blown-up grain what might be a corpse. He returns. The body's gone, negative stolen, reality unwound. Antonioni spent half his $1.8 million budget on authenticity. Carnaby Boutiques, Verushka's one-take runway, a Yardbirds club where Jeff Beck smashes a guitar like disappearing evidence. Carlo Di Palma's pastel filters wash daylight. Night sinks to muted bruises, mirroring certainty's fade. MGM balked at frank nudity, but the nascent ratings board birthed an X-rated hit, $20 million worldwide. Critics feuded. Cale praised psychedelic despair. Simon sneered at all surface. Over decades, it became a Rosetta Stone for meta-mysteries, inspiring The Conversation, Blowout, even Cachet. Trivia, Antonioni insisted on real marijuana for the backstage party. British law required a magistrate's signature for scientific use, yielding one woozy 35-minute take. The park scene, filmed in Greenwich, timed birdsong to metronome cues for unnatural stillness. Wait Until Dark, 1967. Imagine a Greenwich Village basement after sundown. Susie Hendricks, recently blinded, inherits a doll stuffed with heroin. A trio of con men, led by Switchblade's sneering rote stages, cops and pals to retrieve it. Susie smashes every bulb, turning darkness into arsenal. Theater owners dimmed house lights during the climax, triggering national screams. Producer Mel Ferrer built the apartment on Warner Stage 12 with movable walls for prowling shots. Cinematographer Charles Lang rigged dimmers to 1-foot candle increments, enabling the legendary blackout. Hepburn trained with the Lighthouse Guild, wearing occlusive lenses to erase peripheral cues. Arkin stayed in character, greeting her as multiple personas daily. Their final confrontation required 52 takes because Arkin's knife kept catching on doorway trim. Budgeted at $3 million, it hauled $17 million, marketing the Lights Out gimmick on lobby cards. Critics lauded Hepburn's Oscar-nominated turn. Its final jump scare inspired Halloween's closet lunge. Henry Mancini recorded detuned violins on dual reels, playing them simultaneously for nerve-shredding dissonance. A trivia gem, the refrigerator actually emitted hot air to fog lenses, making actors sweat on cue. Targets, 1968. What happens when celluloid monsters are outpaced by real bullets? Peter Bogdanovich's Targets answers with chilling prescience. Aging horror star Byron Orlock, Boris Karloff, poignantly self-referential, ponders retirement, fearing his gothic creepers can't compete with nightly news carnage. Across town, clean-cut Vietnam vet Bobby Thompson assembles rifles, kisses his wife, and begins a freeway sniping spree. Two trajectories collide at a drive-in where Orlock confronts Thompson, screen ghoul versus living killer, forcing audiences to stare at their cultural reflection. Shot in 23 days for $130,000, Roger Corman loaned Karloff for 2 unpaid days. Bogdanovich intercut footage from Karloff's The Terror to pad runtime. Laszlo Kovacs's long lenses stalk Thompson with newsreel detachment. The climactic shootout used real patrons as extras, their genuine panic punctuating blanks. Released months after King and Kennedy's assassinations, the film crept through limited circuits, yet Pauline Kael deemed it the most powerful statement on American violence to date. Post-Columbine, media studies courses dissect its foresight. Fun fact, the water tower rifle prop was traced to an actual pawnshop robbery. life imitating art's nightmare. Boris Karloff, suffering from emphysema, filmed his monologue in one breath-stealing take. Crew members applauded, some weeping. Which title twisted your nerves the tightest? Smash subscribe, ring that bell, and drop your pick in the comments, because on Movieverse, we're excavating buried gold every week. Share this with fellow thrill seekers and keep those eyelids peeled. Our next deep dive hurdles even further into forgotten cinematic labyrinths. Until then, keep watching the shadows, because the past is never dead. It's just waiting for its close-up.